In this video tutorial, we're going to show you how to get your first autonomous database in the Oracle database at AWS. First, you have to go to the AWS Marketplace and sign up for a private offer for the Oracle database at AWS service. Once you have it, you can then go to the service dashboard. Once in the service dashboard, on the left-hand side, you can see all the API resources available to you as part of the service. And if you click on the Get Started section, it shows you the three key steps required to get to your first autonomous database. You need an ODB network, an Exadata infrastructure, and a VM cluster. In this case, we're going to focus on autonomous VM clusters. So you follow the link on the left for ODB networks and create your first ODB network. There are no resources yet, so you could create one with that little button on the bottom, but more commonly you go to the upper right and you start creating your first ODB network. An ODB network is really just a bridge network between the AWS side and the REST end control plane point in the OCI services. So you give it a name, you select the availability zone where you're going to deploy your applications. You give it a CIDR block that will reserve some IP addresses for you for the client applications as well as the backup. You can set a custom domain name if you prefer. And then you can configure additional integrations like AWS S3 or 0ETL to Redshift. And you create ODB network. So once your ODB network is provisioned, then you'll be able to use that in order to create your infrastructures and ultimately your VM clusters. So you move on to the Exadata infrastructure link and you find the same pattern. So we will click on the Create Exadata Infrastructure and go through the provisioning process. You start with general settings. You give your infrastructure a name that makes sense for your particular application. Your availability zone where you're going to be running your applications because you want low latency. And then you configure the other details. Now you can select the X9M or X11. X11 is the latest generation of Exadatas. And then you can select your database servers and storage servers. And you can see the X11 comes with 760 eCPUs and 1.5 terabytes of RAM. And you can select anywhere from a minimum of 2 to a maximum of 32 of those servers in one of these infrastructures. And on the storage side, you get 80 terabytes of storage per server, and you can select from a minimum of 3 up to 64. And you click Next. And now you can go to your maintenance settings. Now you can let Oracle manage everything, or you can use customer managed. And if you choose customer managed, then you can select how you want your maintenance to be done, where it can be done, say the first month of every quarter, and possibly the first week of each of those months. And perhaps you only want it to happen on Saturdays when the workload is less and late at night when there's not many users on it. You can set up a notification time to remind you that that maintenance is going to happen, and you can choose to do a non-rolling, which is a little faster but downtime, or a production type of rolling maintenance where you do it online one server at a time. There are some advanced features to pause in between, but really those are more for non-autonomous maintenance operations. You can set up notifications so that if there are any issues in the back end, we'll ping that person, and typical tag setup. And click Next. So now you review everything that you had set in the provisioning flow, and if you like what you see, you go ahead and click the Create Infrastructure button. Okay. And now that you've got an infrastructure, when you have one that's in the available state, you can then move on to your VM clusters. Now you can have Exadata VM clusters and autonomous VM clusters in the same infrastructure. So we're going to go to autonomous VM clusters. Again, hit the create button, and now you configure your autonomous VM. The general settings, give it a name. You have an optional description. You can set your time zone if you're, not wanting UTC, and you can have a license type. So bring your own license, which if you are an enterprise and you have existing Oracle licenses, that's what you would do. Or you could choose license included. Now you select the infrastructure where you want to create the VM cluster, and then you expand the database server section. Now infrastructures can have up to 32 servers. So you would want to review those servers, look at the available CPU, the available memory, etc., and decide where is it that you want to host this VM cluster. Okay? And so you have to have at least two of them in autonomous because we always have a reserve cluster for failures or for maintenance. Then you move on and you select how much compute you want. And the maximum amount is always relative to how much is left on the infrastructure. You select the amount of memory that you want per eCPU. You select the amount of database storage that you want, depending on how large a database you expect. And then you also select how many underlying containers that you want to run inside this VM, which is a carve out of local storage, but this is where your autonomous databases will run. Okay, and then you set up your network connectivity. So you choose your ODB network where you want this VM cluster to be connected to your applications as the bridge network. You set up your listener ports, whether you're using TLS or non, and you can optionally enable mutual TLS if desired. Now, same thing, for maintenance with a VM cluster, you have Oracle managed, you could just delegate it to Oracle, or you can go customer managed. And if you go customer managed, you have the same flexibility that you had at the infrastructure level. And of course, you can set up tags for your resource. Again, you review all of the things that you selected through the provisioning process. And if you like what you see, you can click to create the autonomous VM cluster. So now that you have a VM cluster, you can start to move into creating autonomous databases. So if you click into the VM cluster itself, you're going to come up to the details page, okay? And this just gives a brief summary of what that VM cluster looks like, which really is kind of the same stuff that you put in the provisioning flow. You can look at connectivity, your resource allocations, and kind of you see the same sort of information that was in your provisioning flow, but it's just a great place later on to be able to get those details, okay? You can also see the virtual machines where it's running, and you can see sort of shortcuts to the VM resource itself and what its identifiers look like and what the infrastructure is that it's running on. But the important thing is in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see a Manage an OCI button. And this is where you do advanced operations. So if you click this, it deep links to the control plane where your REST APIs are for this service to do advanced operations. And you start with general information again, but you see a bunch of other tabs where you can see maintenance details, you can see the virtual machines again that it's running on, you can see maintenance history, for past activities, and importantly, you can see container databases. And when you select the container databases, that's where you can create one, right? Or you can use the links on the left. But also, it's important to note that on the actions in the top for this VM cluster details, you can scale the VM cluster. You can update, its location in terms of manageability of a resource. You can do various things. So, for example, if you choose to scale it, you can come and you can add more compute. You can add the ability to put more container databases in it. You can change the amount of storage that is inside that VM cluster, which ultimately gives you more resources for the containers and the autonomous databases. You can also manage certificates because you can bring your own certificates for your connection. Now click Create Autonomous Container Database, and now you go through the provisioning flow for a container that's going to hold your autonomous database. Give it a name, select a compartment, uh, and then start with the basic image selection. So you can also choose custom images if you've created a custom image, but generally you'll use base images. You can select from both 23 AI databases or 19C. We're going to go with the latest 23 AI database. And then you move into your maintenance configuration. So for the container database, we select some defaults for you, but you can go and modify the maintenance schedule for your container. And again, you have the rolling, non-rolling choices. You have the ability to choose the very latest patch level, or you can go to the sort of one back. You can choose preferences and set up custom schedules for the maintenance. And if you do, then you can set the exact time that you allow the maintenance to occur, exactly like you did with the VM or the infrastructure. And you can do advanced things like skip certain quarters if you have critical periods where you don't want patching of the database. You move into the backup configuration, which can be disabled when you first create databases, but in general, you're going to enable automatic backups. And the default is to Amazon S3 within the AWS services. But you can move to OCI object storage as well. And we have other advanced services like our zero data loss recovery that's coming down the line. You can set your retention for your backup. These are automatic short-term backups, so up to 90 days of retention. And then you have some advanced features which are also coming, which is allowing you to take backup copies and put them in remote locations. And again, contact details in case we see something in the back end. Now, there's an advanced section where people who really understand the Oracle database well can do things like configure your rack, clustering split thresholds. You can set up how much reserved compute you have for failure scenarios and to maintain performance. You can set up your node distribution affinity. These are advanced features for the Oracle database. You can also choose whether you want Oracle to manage your encryption keys for you or whether or not you want to manage them yourselves. And if you want to manage it yourself, you can use OCI Vault services and Oracle Key Vault today. And eventually we're going to have AWS KMS support as well. And if you like what you've done, you hit the create button and then you are going to have a container database. Okay, and if you click on the container database list, you'll see all of them. So here you can see ones that are in the provisioning state, ones which are available, ones which are backup in progress. And so if you click into the container which is available, you can now see the capabilities that you have for the container itself. Is you can drill into maintenance, the autonomous database is running in that container, your high availability and disaster recovery configurations through Autonomous Data Guard. And if you click on actions, you can see that for that container, you can control encryption key rotation, you can change maintenance preferences, you can set your contacts differently, schedule an immediate patching event if you want. So there's all kinds of advanced controls on the container itself. Okay. But importantly, if you go to the autonomous database, this is where you would create an autonomous database. And so you can click create autonomous database and go through the provisioning flow. So once again, you give it a name, you choose the compartment where that resource will live. Usually that's a billing aggregation point. You can choose the workload type because depending on transaction processing or data warehousing, we customize the underlying configuration of autonomous database. You can, if you want, filter to see only the containers that are running Autonomous Data Guard. So containers that have disaster recovery automatically configured, right? So it's like a filtering mechanism. And you choose the container where you want this autonomous database to run. You can, if you want, build a developer instance, which is completely free. They're limited in size. This is only 4 eCPUs in size, and there's some storage limits, but it's absolutely free, and you can create as many as you want. You can enable compute auto scaling, which is highly recommended. It gives you 3 times the amount of compute, but it's scaling in the microsecond level, so it's very, very cost effective for you. You can set the storage for this particular autonomous database. And then there's some advanced options. And one of them is we have this billing model called an elastic pool. So if you know you're going to have lots of databases, you can create an elastic pool and you can enroll your databases into this pool. And that gives you some creative billing advantages. You set your administrative contacts, and then you move on to some other advanced options. If in this case it's Oracle managed keys, but if you had set up customer managed keys, you would have some ability to control your key rotations there. You can set up your character sets for this database. You can choose to enable Oracle database in memory features. So all of the good stuff that comes with an Oracle database, because ultimately the autonomous database is really the best practices pre-configured set up for you with a bunch of AI automation in the back end that runs that very effectively. So once you've got autonomous databases that are created, you can drill into those autonomous databases. And when you do, you now see the details of that particular autonomous database that similar to what you went through in the provisioning flows. And you can see tool configuration. So if you want low-code development environments, you can enable Apex. You have MongoDB APIs. You can see what's going on with your backups, the full backups, the incrementals. You can create a manual backup before like a really disruptive, action, or you can create long-term backups that you can save for 10 years. You have autonomous data guard, details. You have advanced features for data warehousing. You've got performance capabilities where you can optimize your performance, and you can do all kinds of things with this autonomous database that you would normally want to do when running a database. So you can start it and stop it, which stops your billing. If it's a development instance, you can clone it. You can do all of those things that you would want to do with your database. And so that's it. You've created your first autonomous database. Autonomous database is really that embodies the best practices of Oracle, pre-configured for you out of the box. And there's a whole AI and DevOps model behind it. It's so you don't go through a classic Oracle support model. It's more of a DevOps, and it's the best Oracle database experience and the lowest total cost of ownership that you can get with Oracle.